Yeah.
Hopefully. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Old Astoria Neighborhood Association's September meeting. We're glad everybody could join us. I'd like to start with asking anybody who is streaming watching this on YouTube or on Facebook to go to the comments section or the chat section. You'll see a form there, a Google form. And if you could sign in, we'd like to keep track of attendance. So we'd greatly appreciate that you giving us the information and signing on the Google form. Thank you for that. Okay, we're privileged to be here, and hopefully we have an interesting program. It's quite timely. Our first presenters will be the Hospitality Alliance, which is the main lobbyist and advocacy group for the hotel, cafe, bar, and restaurant industry in New York, which is going through fits right now, as we all know. Also, following that, we're going to have the EDC and Hornblower discussing the Ferry and specifically the new extension of the Ferry from Astoria to the Upper East Side, creating a new service to the west from Western Queens to the Upper East Side. And lastly, we have two representatives from the New York City Comptroller's Office. Often people are not aware of what the Comptroller's Office does, so we have asked to have them come in and give a brief overview on what the responsibilities, duties, and programs that they offer. So with that, appreciate everybody's attendance. We'd like to start off with, I'd like to thank Victor Prado, who's hosting this meeting, and he's doing it as a donation. And I'd like to give him the mic for a minute to explain a little bit about what he does.
Sure.
Victor?
Thanks, Richard. My name is Victor Prado. I've been helping Richard with anything in person, but I've been helping him on specifically with these live streams. I do this through my free will, and I like to give back to the community, especially the Astoria community where I am located, and I serve there in my local church. But I'm actually hosting this from my small business, which is Ninja Man Media. Ninja Man Media is actually a social media marketing agency. To get all the confusing terms out of the way, basically that just means I run social media for small business owners, and I create targeted Facebook and Instagram ads. And long story short, basically for a very low monthly rate, I leverage Facebook and Instagram ads, as well as create original content for small business owners. And during these times where everything is digital in the COVID age, a lot of business owners have been taking advantage, and the amount of reach that you can use utilizing social media is actually incredible. And it is probably the best foot in the door when it comes to marketing your small business. So I've been utilizing that for small businesses across New York City and on Long Island, which is where I focus. And I've been making my clients money. So I'm happy, they're happy, everyone's happy.
Good. Thank you very much, Victor. Appreciate your help. I'd also like to give a shout out to some of our staff, Malika Schmidt, who does all of our web work. We appreciate her help. Also, we have a new intern from NYU, Anna De La Rosa. I know she's not on right now, but she's been a great help to us on our blogging. So we appreciate everybody's assistance on this. Okay, I would like to start now also with, we had a rally today, which was quite interesting, and it was attended by most of the elected officials from Donovan Richards on down, who's running for borough president, all of our local elected officials, and it was on saving small business. And it was an interesting event, and I think that it went quite well, and there was a lot of media there. I hope that it does get broadcast. This is a very serious business and something that we're quite heavily involved in. I would also like to bring out somebody now. This is sort of a public service announcement. I received a call from a volunteer locally, Kate Peterson, and she is trying to establish a cleanup for our local parks. So I thought I would give her a minute or two just to discuss what her plans are. This just came up yesterday, so we're working on this really quick. But Kate, just give us an idea of what we want to do here.
Yeah, so I've been organizing neighborhood cleanups for the last, I can't count how many weeks, but basically since June. And it's just been an amazing turnout to see a lot of people come out instead of just complaining about the trash and the litter that's piling up. Clearly it's an issue. Clearly there needs to be a bigger solution, but we can also make a change by showing up and picking that up ourselves. So we wanted to expand and actually touch on more areas in the, that is covered by the Old Astoria Neighborhood Association. So we are going to do a big park cleanup for most of the parks and playgrounds that are south of Astoria, the big Astoria Park. So we're going to be at Rainey Park this Sunday at 10 a.m. So I would love anyone that wants to show up. If you want to just find out about future efforts, we have Instagram and Facebook. The tag is called Proud Astorian with an N at the end. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring it.
Do you have any other contact information if people want to reach out to you to discuss any issues that they may have in order to get together with you?
Yeah, I'm at proudastorian@gmail.com. And then in the next day, our website may or may not be up. It's proudastorian.com. Until then, Facebook, Instagram, both have the same handle. Yeah.
Okay, great. Could you also put that in chat in case people want to see that?
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you so much. It's people like you. We actually had a cleanup that Victor was involved in about a year and a half ago, and it led to good things. It actually led to the start of street cleaning in Astoria, which we had never had before. It was one of the most important factors to getting sanitation to actually start that. So it does work. It's important.
Yeah.
It's probably the most important thing, volunteerism, to keep a community growing in the right direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, we're very privileged, and timing-wise, I think it worked out quite well to have the Hospitality Alliance joining us. It just happened that I actually we booked a couple weeks ago, but the timing of yesterday's announcement of the opening of indoor dining made this meeting even more important. So one thing I want to state about this is what we're talking about is not just to answer your questions. We need to know what your questions are. So if we don't have the answer, we know the right things to ask the governor, the mayor, and the powers to be. We don't want to continue to go through scenarios where everything changed every week, like in the beginning of this program when there were no requirements for the type of berries you needed. People invested a lot of money, and then all of a sudden everything changed and they had to redo all the work and they were not compensated. These kind of things, when we're trying to save an industry, are just should not happen. And hopefully through communications, we can alleviate that. So I'd like to bring up Andrew Rigie, if possible. Andrew, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, and I'd like to, Andrew is the New York City Hospital Alliance Executive Director. Okay, Hospitality Alliance, excuse me, Executive Director. He was from Queens. His family had a bakery here, so hats off to you from being from Queens. I know you joined the New York State Restaurant Association in 2004, and you were founding executive director of the Hospitality Alliance in 2012, and you have spent the time since then delivering information, education services, and representing thousands of restaurants and nightlife venues. Just so you know, I don't know if you did know this, but I am actually a nightlife venue person myself. I play music and I worked in clubs for probably 40 years. So Now you know that too.
Very nice. Good. Well, so many people are connected to our industry in so many ways, and that's why we got to fight like hell to save our industry. Well, listen, thanks. And I'm very close to Astoria. I lived there for a long time. My brother still lives there, and I am there often and eating when I'm there. So, listen, thanks for having us. Again, my name is Andrew Rigie. I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Really, I appreciate you all having me. Going to give you a quick overview of the Hospitality Alliance. I want to talk about a bunch of the policies that we've had enacted since COVID struck, how they've been impacting the industry. I'll give a quick update on the announcement for indoor dining. Happy to answer some questions. And then my colleague, Rob Bookman, who's speaking next, I know is going to give some information about the SLA requirements, some other Q&A. I'm going to have to jump, but Rob also knows these issues inside out, so he'll be able to pick up where I leave off if need be. So as far as our background, the Hospitality Alliance, we officially launched back in September of 2012. Our goal was to give New York City's restaurant and nightlife industry an independent voice in the halls of government, and an organization that really moved at the same speed as they do, nights, weekends, holidays, 24/7, because we were just being impacted by so many different, bureaucracy, red tape, rules, regulations, lawsuits, plus all just the market pressures and the ever-changing and evolving industry. And I think we launched at a very important time. We've brought on thousands of members throughout the 5 boroughs, and they range from, your mom and pop cafe that's been in the neighborhood for 50 years to your 4-star restaurant, to a pub, to a big nightclub, and really almost everything in between. Obviously, when COVID hit, which we'll focus on, the world changed, and our focus was laser. We needed to figure out what we can do to help as many people in our industry in as many different ways as we possibly could. So a few things we got enacted. One was a cap on third-party delivery fees from companies like Grubhub and Seamless that have been extracting, upwards of 30% fees off of each order. In many cases, they're taking more in a fee than the restaurant is actually making. Also addressing egregious behavior. They were charging restaurants bogus fees for phone call orders that never occurred. So we got a couple of laws passed. One, it capped the third-party fees at no more than 5% for the actual transaction or marketing, and then an additional 15% for the actual physical delivery. So if you don't have your own delivery personnel and you hire a third party or the actual delivery or the company like Grubhub does the delivery, that's capped at 15%. So there's no way all in it should exceed more than 20%. And if you were doing your own deliveries, again, that's 5% versus upwards of 20 plus just for the transaction. Also levying fines for bogus fees that has helped. And then on Monday, the mayor is going to be signing an extension of that law, which again is critically important, especially for those restaurants that have a significant delivery business. And our eye, of course, is focused on eventually enacting a permanent cap on these third-party delivery fees. Another critically important piece of legislation we got passed, which actually came up from talking with our members in a forum similar to this, was the personal liability guarantees many of you sign in your leases that basically make you liable personally if you're not paying your rent. The legislation that was passed suspends enforcement of those personal liability guarantees during a covered period, basically from when COVID hit until September 30th. Now, that legislation was passed early on when we didn't think we would still, unfortunately, be in the situation we are currently in. So it looks like the council and mayor are set to pass and extend that personal liability shield, so to speak, for another 6 months, which is going to be very, very important. As you all know, it's the difference between, do I just toss my keys in right now to my landlord and give up, or do I try to continue to fight on because I otherwise have a viable business if it wasn't for COVID. So it was a real, safety precaution, for small business owners. We had things like sidewalk cafe fees waived, and for some people that had already paid them, they should have been reimbursed for those fees they paid. We also helped architect the outdoor dining program. My colleague Rob and I had been around pushing to allow outdoor dining. I had then co-authored an op-ed with City Council Speaker Corey Johnson on this issue and put a lot of pressure on the mayor to roll out the program. I know at the beginning, about 3 days in, it was hugely problematic. Richard alluded to it when they retroactively changed the barrier requirements. I know here and there's some still issues, but overall, I mean, what I hear is it's been a real lifeline for the industry. People want to make this permanent. I think it's really reimagined our streetscape, provided great support to these restaurants, and also beautified our streets and made it a more, livable city. And the fact that there's no fee to participate, there was a self-certification process, so you didn't have all the architectural design costs, et cetera, the whole, application process made it much more accessible to a lot of businesses. We're advocating for it to be extended. The mayor already announced next year it's going to come back. There are some additional changes we're looking for, like giving you the ability to use adjacent space next to the business, using heat lamps as the weather gets cooler, addressing situations like if there's a city bike dock in front of your business or another obstruction that either limits how many tables and chairs you can have or basically effectively keeps you out from participating in the program, to see if there's workarounds there. Alcohol to go, which was a huge boom for, restaurants and bars around the city. We were a big advocate to get that done. And as you probably know, we've been successful in getting the governor and the state liquor authority to extend that month after month. And we hope to continue to have that extended. The PPP, from the very beginning, actually, both Rob and I co-authored an op-ed in Forbes the day that the PPP took effect. And we said, while it's well-intentioned, it clearly was not designed and developed for the restaurant industry. Working with Senator Schumer and others, we were able to get some changes. You may recall early on that PPP required 75% of it to go to payroll and 25% to go to rent. We got that changed to a 60-40 ratio, 60 labor, 40 rent and utilities, as well as extending the period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks with some other tweaks as well, which are really important. Obviously, we're in September and we're still not even open indoors, although we're on that path. We've been fighting like crazy to get the federal government to enact the Restaurants Act, which is a $120 billion grant program that would give grants, not loans that are converted into grants, just grants to help you pay rent, payroll, utilities, vendors, all of these other expenses. It has bipartisan support. Most of the New York delegation is supportive of the bill. Unfortunately, it's a federal issue, so I'm sure many of you follow federal and national politics and know how that goes or doesn't go. So it's really unsure what the fate of it is, but there is bipartisan support and a lot of support, as well as for a few other bills there, such as another round of PPP. We had a bill introduced that would help get insurance companies to pay business interruption insurance claims, which has been a huge issue. And all these insurers have basically been denying claims across the board, even if you do not have a pandemic exclusion. In fact, they've been denying some claims where there is a virus inclusion. We also have two bills in the state legislature and the Senate and the Assembly that would get business interruption insurance claims paid, something that we are fighting hard for. And several other things. I mean, we've gotten more done probably in the past 6 months than in the past 6 years, which shows how important it is to have an organization like the Hospitality Alliance that can basically channel all of your strength and vitality and create a forum for small business owners, restaurant bar owners to have their voice heard. There's not as much power in one voice, but when we unite, We have a lot of power, and we need to use it and channel it properly. And when I look at the city's restaurant and nightlife industry, I continue to say, and I sound like a broken record, but there is no way the city of New York is going to recover unless our restaurants and our nightlife are at the core of the recovery. Just like Richard said, he's not directly in the industry, but he's connected to it as a musician. And there's so many other people, whether you're an upstate farmer or an oyster farmer out in Long Island. So we really need to be together and fighting for it, which brings me to indoor dining. About 2.5 weeks ago, we hosted a press conference with restaurateurs from around the city, basically demanding a plan from the state and city to get indoor dining opened. It had been around the clock press advocacy. So many elected officials and others had come out in support of this effort. And then, as you know, the governor just announced that restaurants will be opening September 30th at a 25% indoor occupancy, which of course we wanted 50%, but one step forward is better than standing still or going backwards, but also with a blueprint to get to 50% hopefully by November 1st or sooner, based on compliance and ensuring the infection rate does not spike related to indoor dining. There's so many other issues that are going on that are so important to the industry. We recognize that 25%, but even 50% is not going to save our industry. Frankly, pre-pandemic, at 100% occupancy, it was so difficult to survive. So there's not going to be one policy. We know all restaurants and bars are situated similarly, but also differently. How much space do you have outside? I mean, it's amazing 10,000 restaurants are participating in outdoor dining, but there's more than 25,000 eating and drinking establishments throughout the 5 boroughs. What's consumer behavior going to be like once you're open? Even if you have 25% or 50% occupancy, are your customers yet going to be comfortable eating indoors? That's why we want to extend the outdoor dining, which, mind you, was always from the beginning a plan to get more occupancy outdoors to make up for the loss of occupancy indoors. At that time, we didn't think we'd be here in September with no indoor dining at all. So the governor did release some details, but we expect in the coming days, some of the details about indoor dining will have some more specifics, but it's 25% occupancy. That looks like it'll be based on whatever your certificate of occupancy is. Patrons will have to have their temperature check at the door, which you probably see in some other industries. They do it, some buildings, they're doing it. One member of each party will have to provide contact information, like phone number, email. That's for contact tracing purposes. No service after midnight. That's going to be clarified. Does that mean that you have to stop, everyone has to be out of the restaurant by midnight, or is that last call? No bar service, meaning that people can't sit at the bar. But, if you're a bar and you are serving food and meeting all the food requirements, which I think Rob Bookman may touch on, according to the governor's executive order, where a food item must be served with alcohol, you should be okay, we believe. We are seeking some clarity on particularly like Japanese restaurants where it's not so much a bar as it is a dining counter. Would that be allowable? Tables 6 feet apart, are we going to be able to use plexiglass or other types of barriers if it's not feasible to have the tables spaced apart? And then finally, there are some questions about enhanced air filtration and ventilation. I don't want people to get overly worried until we say you have to be worried. The governor was asked about this at his press conference, and he explained that in situations it was going to require whole new HVAC systems, but perhaps you'd be able to use your current AC systems, maybe just with a little bit denser filter or something along those lines. Also a best practice, keeping doors, windows open so you have that air circulation. But there's more to come on all of these points. We understand it's an impossible situation. We know people are just really fighting for their livelihoods and their businesses and their employees and their communities. So we appreciate what you do. The Hospitality Alliance is here. We've just been fighting literally around the clock, supporting the industry. You can join our newsletter. You can go to our website, which is thenycalliance.org. That's thenycalliance.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook. Sign up for our newsletter. We send out so much important information, keeping you up to date on all the changes in the rules, laws, regulations, trends. We do a lot of surveys. We do a lot of training and compliance seminars. We have our hospitality helpline, which we contact members. We answer questions. And we also allow you to get engaged in the political process. We set up campaigns to let you contact your elected officials about all sorts of issues. And we're really here for you. Like you said, we're a nonprofit, membership based. We are here because of all of you, and we'd love to get you involved. Our membership, and we can send information out, starts at $1 a day. You can sign up for our newsletter at no cost. But like I said before, our industry needs to come back for our city to come back. We need your support. We need your participation. Our industry needs to be united more so than ever before. And listen, I told you, I've lived in Astoria for a long time. I'm there all the time. You have amazing businesses, and you make our city so great. And we're here any way we can to support you, support our industry, and keep fighting. And you can always reach out to us with any ideas, concerns you have. Your issues help inform what our issues are. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy, before I jump, unfortunately, to another meeting, to do a quick Q&A, Richard, if you want, if there's time.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can hang till the end. And as I said, my colleague Rob Bookman's here, and he is kind of the leading liquor license attorney in the city. He's been doing this work for many years and knows these issues inside and out.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Thank you. I think everybody else agrees, and you guys are doing a great job. It is a step at a time, and hopefully things are going in the right direction. One thing I would like to bring up myself is, what is the position of the Alliance in reference to compliance by patrons? Because one of the biggest issues I've seen here locally is that while it seems that the restaurants are being penalized for non-compliance with their patrons, the patrons themselves are not being penalized. And I'm not sure how in any world you can enforce compliance without some sort of getting some sort of a negative thing from this non-compliance. So it's difficult to think about using police. I don't think we really want to do that if possible. But I wonder if you guys have any ideas or anything that's going on.
No, it's a tough issue. So listen, I don't know if I have if we have a position per se on the issue. What I can say is, clearly this is a very challenging issue. There's a lot going on right now, with policing and all of these other issues. So you could certainly, put it in that context. I think Rob Bookman can definitely speak to this a little bit. I mean, one of the challenges that we've had is one of the executive orders that requires businesses, or I should say, makes them responsible for 100 feet around their premises.
Yeah.
Proven hugely problematic in a place like New York, where, there could be 4 liquor license establishments within 100 feet. So who's responsible? Do you really want to put restaurant workers in harm's way by telling them to go across the street or halfway down the block and telling some stranger to, put their mask on and put their beer down? So it's been hugely problematic. We know that. We think if you look at the State Liquor Authority inspection data, now we're at 98, 99% compliance. So everything that everyone's doing is working, but we recognize it's very challenging. I think Rob could add a little bit more to that, but it's a problem not just for restaurants, but just the management of the streets when it comes to cleanliness, sanitation pickup, public safety, and all these other issues. So your question is obviously industry specific, but I think when you talk about what's happening on our streets and how businesses have to deal with it, it also partially has to be looked at in the context of just what's happening in our city overall in the streets. So I don't know how much that helps, but like I said, Rob could certainly add to that. Okay.
We have one question here from Rick White. It says, Andrew, there's been no mention about possibly going above 25% on November First, only that there will be a reevaluation. We need to get them to give us a better idea of what their plan is.
So the plan, so actually, this is actually one of the good things. So maybe I can clarify a little bit. So the plan is with, let's first put it in, we're in a pandemic, so anything can change tomorrow. The health situation is going to dictate what happens overall. But the plan is officially on November 1st, they will look at two metrics in particular. One, the infection rate. If it gets to 2 to 3%, and now we've been hovering for the past 30 days at under 1%, if we keep it under, 2-3%, then we should meet the health requirements to get open. The second is compliance, and that's a little bit less. I can't give you a percentage, but generally, as you've probably heard and read, the governor, right or wrong, has been very concerned about compliance. And if we can demonstrate that we generally handle all the compliance and do a good job, and we are still under 2% infection rate, then November 1st or possibly sooner, we could open up at 50%. But nothing's easy. I mean, you may have just heard the mayor come out today talking about, well, he wants a definitive closing if we exceed 2%, which is different from what the governor's saying. So, these things change. It's an impossible situation. But I think based on what the governor has publicly said, if we are doing okay with compliance and we're generally keeping our infection rate the same, it will be November 1st or sooner.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? We have a lot of, one question we did have here from Phil Capadora is, how do we reach you? Gmail, he wanted your contact information.
Oh yeah, and what you can do, if you, we are at info@the NYC Alliance.org. And if you send your question, we will get it, and based on what it is, we'll direct it to to the right person.
Okay, great. Okay, you were so complete in your presentation that actually there was no other questions. Oh, okay. We finally got a question here from Frank Arcabasio. Why is Long Island at 50%?
So we had been saying all along that New York City has met, sustained, and exceeded the health metrics that allowed restaurants throughout the rest of the state to operate at 50% occupancy. I guess what I will say is, like so much in life, it tends to be a compromise. You've seen even the back and forth over the past 24 hours with the governor and the mayor. I think compliance is a big issue. Again, you can argue it till you're blue in the face, but the people that make the decisions think that there needs to be an eye out on what's going to happen with compliance. They acknowledge when it first rolled out, that was more of a problem, and we've gotten so much better at it. The other big issue is that schools are opening. You have gyms opening. You have other sectors of the economy that are also opening, and they are concerned about so much happening at one time. Again, I could argue to you both sides of it, but that's the 25%. Like I said, with a roadmap to get to 50%. I know people are unhappy about it, but one step's better than standing still, and hopefully we can get to the 50% soon. And then the big outstanding question is going to also be, even if you have 25 or 50%, are your customers, and I think it's going to be different based on demographics and location, whether or not you'll even have that many people. And I also think as it starts getting cooler out, look, if people can eat outside right now, they may just do that. But, as it gets cooler, they may want to eat indoors. So, I guess politics, if you look at it from a public health perspective, 6 tables 6 feet apart and 50% reduced occupancy is the same if you're in Astoria or if you're in Schenectady. But the other question has come up is just that, because there's density, they say the outdoor density, that infections can spread sooner. So listen, there's all good arguments for why we should open up more, but it is what it is right now, and let's get this done. Let's do everything right, and let's get to 50% soon. And like I said before, we need to demand we pass the Restaurants Act, the Save Our Stages Act. We need to demand that we get rent relief and all this other support, because there's not one policy, whether it's 50% or 75, that's going to save us. But Frank, your point's well taken.
There are a couple more questions coming through. However, how's your time look? I know that we have to bring in Robert. Okay.
2 questions.
All right. We have, how strict are they going to be? This is from Joey Brown, at 25%. And does that include staff? Most bars and restaurants keep their capacity at the lowest, which is like 64. So 25% is only 16 people. I'm not sure what that means, but you see the.
Yes. Yeah. So I think the 25% is going to be based on your certificate of occupancy, inclusive of your employees. So I know that, of course, kind of reduces it. That's how my understanding is it's been done around the state. So yeah, the 25% inclusive. And let's see, how strict are they going to? And so I guess that was the same thing, how strict are they going to be? And like I said, the enforcement issue and compliance issue is of the utmost importance to governors.
This is what
we do to follow requirements, even if we don't like them, is going to be very important to continue to advance and get more occupancy.
This is why I asked her initially about enforcement. I think it's going to be very important. From Rick White, you briefly touched on the big issue. I've listened in on several of these calls. Can you offer any words of encouragement on business interruption insurance claims to be paid out anytime in the near future?
Nice. That's when I feel like the Grim Reaper, all this stuff. I don't know. No one knows. There's a little bit movement and discussion at the federal level, but like I said before, with all of these bills, the Democrats want one thing, the Republican Party can't seem to agree on much. And how the November election and the Trump plays into this is a wild card. So, the federal legislation, we are pushing all the time. There's some movement and conversations happening, but I don't know when it and if it will happen. On the state level, the State Assembly and Senate, there are both bills that will get interruption insurance paid out. There is growing support. Interestingly enough, today you may have seen Century 21, the clothing department store, is closing many of its stores. And I guess there was some blame placed on the insurers for not helping and paying out their business interruption insurance. And while it was nice to see how sad people are that Century 21 is closing because they remember buying clothes, as I do there, the conversation quickly pivoted to this is exactly why we need business interruption insurance paid. And there's been tons of activity on social media today, giving it some more momentum. So I don't want to give you false hope that it's going to pass within the next couple of months, but we keep fighting. I would contact your council members, your state senators, your state assembly members, and your Congress members and senators, and urge them to pass it. Tell them how important it is. And if you have social media, start posting on social media.
Good. Listen, I think that I think that we have a few more questions, but we can go over these questions with Robert actually later. So I'd like to move on if we can, because we do have a lot on the agenda. But I really greatly appreciate, you've done a great job. Like one person said, basically, you covered everything, which is why we didn't get 100 questions,
Great. Well, thank you. Like I said, reach out. And Richard, thanks for having me, and keep up all your good work. And like I said, Rob Bookman's here. And, anything we can do, just continue to reach out and hopefully get engaged with the Hospitality Alliance.
Great. Okay. And thank you for joining us. Be safe, stay healthy, and keep us informed as to your new initiatives so we can reach out to our members and our followers to let them know.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye. Good. We have a big agenda, so this is why I have to want to change. Now, I'd like to bring up Robert Bookman. Robert, if you're available. Oh, I don't hear you. Yeah, I think you're muted. There we go.
I think you're right. I was muted.
Yeah. Okay, this is Robert Bookman. He's actually, briefly, he's one of the founders of the New York City Hospitality Alliance, and he's a recognized industry advocate. He was appointed to several government advisory positions, including the New York City Council of the Nightlife Advisory Board, which is charged in making recommendations to the mayor and city council on improving regulations and policies for nightlife establishment. He was also appointed by Governor Cuomo to the working group of industry leaders tasked with recommending revisions to the New York State Alcohol Beverage Control Law, and by the City Council to the Food Service Establishment Advisory Board, which is tasked with recommending to the Health Department restaurant inspection procedures and letter grading process. Mr. Bookman.
Thank you, Richard. I get appointed to so many of these voluntary boards to wonder I can make a living.
I know the feeling.
With my other hat, other than literally the Hospitality Alliance was founded in my law office, I'm a founding partner of law firm Pizetsky and Bookman. My original partner, who's retired now, had been counsel to the State Liquor Authority. I had been counsel in the 1980s to the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. A mutual friend brought us together, and it was great synergy. And 30 some odd years later, we are the go-to alcohol regulatory, firm, in the state. We do lots of that work. And while I am not from Astoria, nor do I have roots in Astoria, you can see my Met paraphernalia in the back. And my children have complained that they can sue me for child abuse because I made them Mets and Jets fans. So that's my connection to Queens. So Andrew touched on just about all of the major initiatives that the Alliance has done since COVID. There's one more he neglected to mention, which is coming up and is very important. And then I will really spend a few minutes just basically talking about compliance, inspections, SLA compliance, and answering questions concerning that. So there is one other piece of legislation that we have been pushing, which we did get the mayor's support on, as well as the city council, and it's scheduled for a vote next Wednesday at the city council. And that will allow restaurants the option of adding a clearly disclosed COVID surcharge onto their menus of up to 10% of the menu prices. It'll have to be clearly disclosed. The language will have to say, that it's a COVID surcharge. You can't say it's, I hate the mayor, de Blasio surcharge. They made sure they got that language in. It clearly will have to say that it is not a tip and that it goes to the house, so that it should hopefully not impact your server's tips. But and your councilman Costas is a sponsor and supports it, and we thank him for that. But it's an important additional, means of temporarily getting some revenue. It will expire once restaurants are at 100%, no longer under executive orders, plus 3 months. So it should, unfortunately, be in effect for quite some time. It's just another way for people to understand surcharges today. They get them at the airports. They get them on their all kinds of utility bills, on their cable bill, when they're in cabs. People should understand and be happy with the COVID surcharge. So that's coming up, and let Costa know when he shows up later how much you appreciate that he's co-sponsoring this bill. Mm-hmm. So current state of play on enforcement is the state is running the show, and the governor runs the state. So the governor is running the show. The mayor can, complain about this or about that, like he did today about the announcement concerning indoor dining. At the end of the day, we've been under government by executive order for about 6 months now. There is no end in sight for that, which is, as a lawyer, a problem in and of itself, and starting to generate lots of litigation throughout the state on a variety of issues. Like the questioner said before, why could somebody in Long Island be 50%, but I'm only at 25% and we're 100 feet away? This all comes because of executive, of governance by executive only. And therefore, Cuomo gets to decide really what happens legally There's a lawsuit now in Buffalo from a restaurant it's a large upstate restaurant. They converted it into a class action. Their 50% occupancy is 150 people because it's a 300-person total occupancy. But when they operate as a restaurant, they're at 150 people. When they operate as a buyout for a private function, which they do a lot of, it's a maximum 50 people because the rule says a private function cannot have more than 50 people. So they brought a lawsuit saying same menu, same staff, same location. Yes, they were at 150 when it's safe, but now it's a wedding, so it's only 50. But that's where you're at when you're under government by executive order. I think they mean well. New York was at the epicenter, of this disaster, and we probably the number one state in fighting off the disaster. So I don't believe that there's any. I think they're coming from a good place, but there's been a huge negative impact on the business community and people's livelihoods and and their lives that they spent an entire life, building up, a small business. But that's where we're at, and that's what we're dealing with. And as a result, there was a huge increase in the number of inspections. We've all dealt with it. Everybody on this Zoom call has dealt with it. The governor was unhappy with the level of NYPD enforcement. The State Liquor Authority has a skeletal staff, not like the old days. I think there's 15 inspectors for the entire state of New York. So obviously they rely on local police department, even on the non-COVID times, for referrals for violations, shootings, drugs, sale to minors are all done by the local police. The local police in New York City, as Andrew explained, for a variety of political and social unrest reasons, were not interested in May, before there was outdoor dining, especially when people after Memorial Day were gathering in the streets because they had been cooped up for months and they were enjoying takeout alcohol and drinking. They were not interested in enforcing social distancing rules, mask rules, or open container laws. And it really pissed off the governor, to put it in legal terms. It delayed, quite frankly, our opening of restaurants indoors because of this compliance issue. In our conversations with the governor's office and his people, we had long passed the issue of why is it safe in Westchester but not in the Bronx. They recognized that issue, that it's safe. It was compliance and enforcement. And in the last couple of weeks, by their own metrics, 99+% enforcement every day now with these voluminous number of inspections. So I don't know. So my guess is there shouldn't be a lot of questions about what compliance is because everybody is complying. Nevertheless, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about what has been the biggest issues for the State Liquor Authority and which has led to their most serious penalty of summary suspension. Now, summary suspensions were always around. It was always part of the law. But it was always reserved for the most serious of violations, and it was rare. It basically meant that there was a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a pattern and practice of sale to minors, such that there was such an imminent safety to the public health and welfare that we weren't going to go through the normal process of sending you charges, having a hearing, waiting for the results of the hearing, having that go to the commissioners to institute a penalty of suspension or revoking your license. We're going to immediately do it and then give you a hearing. That process has always been there, but maybe they did 12 a year. Since COVID and this enforcement, they've done about 150 just in New York City, just in the last few months. So while it's a small percentage of the total number of licenses in New York City, there are 15,000 establishments in the city of New York, a little under, that have licenses and from the State Liquor Authority. It's still a lot. And what we've been seeing is that there are definite mortal sins, if you will, which result in a summary suspension. And those were patrons drinking or eating indoors, which will come to an end in 3 weeks as one of the major mortal sins. Alcohol being sold to go without food, and consumption of alcohol on the streets, open containers, bars creating a party-like atmosphere. Not just that there are a couple of people drinking out there, but the French doors are open. There's speakers, or a DJ right out front. They've created an illegal bar that wasn't in their original approved, plans, and they put it outdoors in a backyard, or they put it right inside or right outside in some cases onto the street. And lots of people drinking, and being served drinks with no lids and straws, and getting a second round, without food. So those, I'd say, are the overwhelming majority of the summary suspensions, but not all of them. And there is no clear 3 strikes and you're out. I mean, it could be 1 strike and you have a summary suspension if it's a really bad situation. Or I've had people have a number of very minor ones where, 1 employee was not seen wearing a mask, but 10 were, Also, since open dining, that started to get better, because as Andrew and I would always argue that people are going to go out whether you like it or not. The only option for government is, can we provide lawful, regulated places for them to go out, or unlawful, unsafe, unregulated places for them to go out? But you're not going to stop people from going out. That's always been true. And it was true for outdoor, and for drinking. Once on June 22nd, when outdoor dining was thought to be approved, and the more places, expanded into outdoor dining, the number of violations started to go down, because people didn't need to stand around. They can sit like a normal person and have a drink. We think that will continue once indoor dining starts, because people would rather sit down than stand around. And so we think that'll help with, the overall compliance. But, food is going to be one of the, important criteria, and has been for a few weeks and will continue to be. I mean, the good news is we got a lot of questions today because the governor said no bar service, and a lot of bars and nightclubs are reaching out to me. Saying, does that mean I can't open, indoors? No, you can open indoors. But it may be a substantial change of method of operation from what you're used to. When they say no bar service, what they mean is the physical bars that are located in a bar, in a tavern, in a nightclub, in a restaurant, will now be converted into a service bar, meaning no seats and no customers could go up and order and purchase a drink from the bartender. Everything is going to be converted into seated tables that are 6 feet apart. Perhaps less with barriers. We're trying to get, plexiglass barriers. We're trying to get confirmation on that. And food. And food sufficient to have a dining experience. Understand that New York State doesn't have a clear bar license category versus restaurant license category. We do have something that's called a tavern category, but historically, lots of places got a tavern that in other states would be considered a restaurant. Almost every Irish bar and grill in the state of New York has a tavern category, but they may have a full kitchen and a full menu. So it was less clear in the state of New York. Other states were allowing restaurants to remain open and were closing down their bars, and closing down their nightclubs. So what the governor and the SLA is saying is, since we don't have a distinction, what we want is restaurants to be open. And if you're a bar and you can create a restaurant type of experience, then you're okay. And so potato chips and pretzels is not a restaurant type of experience. Having 4 people share a hot dog is not a restaurant experience. So that, if you are a bar that's had virtually no menu, you will be able to open up indoors just as you've been able to operate outdoors. But you have to have food, what the liquor authority says, sufficient to your category. And tavern categories, lesser foods were okay. You didn't need full meals. You didn't need a kitchen. But you did need some soups or sandwiches. It could be microwavable food. It could be hot dogs. And they are saying that has to be ordered at the same time or prior to any alcohol being ordered. And you need to keep the records of that. So when the inspector comes by and he sees tables where they're drinking and there's no eating, you have to have physical records through your POS system, or if you don't have a POS system, just like the old days where the waiter or waitress had a little book with duplicates, and the dupe went to the kitchen, or the bartender and she kept the other one. You're going to have to be able to prove that these people ordered food and ordered sufficient food now, and they've eaten it now, and they've had a second round, which is okay. They don't need to order food with each round, but they do. What is not allowed any longer is handing a menu to somebody and saying, "Can I take your drink order while you decide?" Not allowed. They must order the food before you serve them a drink. You could serve them the drink before the food is ready, but they have to have ordered the food, and it has to go into your food system. And we anticipate an answer to that other question is yes, they're going to be very careful with that in enforcing that and enforcing the 25% number. I don't think there's going to be any leeway there. It'll probably be a C of O divided by 25% of that. Staff will count. That may not provide for a lot of seating, but that's what they're going to want, and it's going to be, we believe, fairly strictly enforced. A lot of the other, some of the excuses, that we have heard, that it was raining outside just when the inspector happened to show up, and everybody ran inside the restaurant, because of the rain. It doesn't, no pun intended, doesn't wash. And again, 3 weeks when you can have people inside, that wouldn't be a problem. But if there's 40% of your occupancy indoors, and you use that same excuse that it was raining, so a lot of people sitting outdoors came inside, and the inspector came by, again, a legal term, you're screwed. It's just not acceptable. You'll have to tell the people that's sitting outside they got to go home, with stay under the tent, whatever it is. That way, can't let you inside. We're at capacity. A guest ordered from the bar while waiting to go into the bathroom, you're not going to be able to order. You're not supposed to be ordered from the bars at all. So, that's not going to work. Or the guest, drank his drink while waiting for his to-go order. He ordered a sandwich and a beer. We served him the beer while the sandwich was being prepared, and he started to drink from the beer, and that's when the inspector come in. That's an excuse. It does not work. Does not work. And then there's, best practices, which is really going above and beyond what the bare minimum of the words, might say. And I think early in this indoor dining, if we want to get to 50% quickly, in 30 days or less, it's not the worst idea to think about, best practices. For example, when you're open, when you're open just outdoors, there's no reason if you have music blasting indoors, because your music's not supposed to be heard outside anyway under the noise code. So don't create that party type of atmosphere, which encourages, street drinking. We've had individuals who could not control the alcohol to go. It's just the location, the number of young people around. They weren't interested in having battles with people. And there was just a party scene on their sidewalk in front of them. We've talked about, suspending, at least for that night, any alcohol to go there. Just stop it. Do it for deliveries only. Better to lose some alcohol to delivery go for a night than the NYPD or the SLA inspectors to show up that night and see 30 people outside drinking, not in your outdoor seating. So that obviously don't set up a bar in a window or any unapproved area for your bar. Bars are not rolling. You're not a catering establishment where during a catered event you're allowed to have a rolling bar. All of us restaurants, bars, nightclubs have fixed bars. It's in your SLA approved plans. Whether it's a service bar or not, they're fixed, and you can't, move them. One person said to me, got caught with a 36 people in the backyard, and C of O said 18 people. He said, well, I counted the number of people indoors in my C of O, the number of people outdoors, and when I figured together, I was, I was okay with 36 outside. When the C of O just said 18 people, plus he set up a service bar outside where there was none on the plan. So that kind of stuff drives the SLA crazy. So I think, the watchword is going to be compliance, compliance, compliance. And I think if we do a good job, with that, and we will get a lot more information in the next week. We're working day to day with the governor and the mayor's people. The mayor's a lot tougher, as you saw, but at the end of the day, it's the governor's show. He will call the shots. But if we can continue with very high level of compliance, I think we'll get to 50% fairly quickly. Where we go from there is anybody's guess. Nobody's even talking about plans of the industry going above 50% anywhere in the state. It's not a phase. So that's a real concern. The one other thing I wanted to say, another reason why you don't want to get a summary suspension is the overwhelming majority of the summary suspensions have been able to get their licenses back. But it's taken many, many weeks to go through the process, the settlement negotiations, coming up with a number, and having the liquor authority accept that number. I haven't seen anything less than 10,000 or less than 10,000. I saw one at 50,000, and I say the average one is around 20 to 25,000, plus, some sort of change in proving to them that it's not going to happen again. And that could result from, and that could be anything from, firing a manager to stopping alcohol to go, or, a variety of other, of other questions. So you really don't want, and in the most serious ones, they're not accepting money. They're proceeding with a hearing to revoke the license. So you certainly don't want to have to call a lawyer to say, I got summary suspension, because it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive. I think now probably a good time for questions. What do you think, Richard? You're muted, Richard.
Thank you. Actually, I want to thank you very much for a great presentation. Both you and Andrew have covered a lot of topics here. So we have a few questions here. Let me see now. Let's start down here. Okay, first of all, this was actually an earlier question. I'm sure you can answer, from Yanis Batas. Why can't we just place our tables inside 6 feet apart, even if that exceeds the short answer is because
you're not allowing it. That's the short answer. I agree. Mm-hmm. I don't think, and we've argued apparently unsuccessfully, that the percentages there's no scientific reason for percentages. If the safety standards are X number of feet apart, masks, air filtration, you tell us what the safety standards are. And if we meet those safety standards and that number in my place turns out to be 32%, what's the difference? By the way, in some places meeting those standards, they won't be able to meet 50% or 25%. It'll be a lot less even. So I agree, with you, Janice, but unfortunately the government does not.
From Joey Brown, how about if a bar teams up with another restaurant next door to serve food?
Not allowed. The liquor authority, for two reasons. One is every licensed premise is supposed to have some level of food, even bars. It's minimal. We get them approved with pre-COVID with a microwave, and nobody cares if you order it pre-COVID. You just have to have it available, some soup, some microwave pizzas, frozen pizzas, whatever. Doesn't matter if anybody ordered it. Now it does matter, but they are not allowing the food to be brought in from another premise. Sorry. Good idea. We also asked about that. The answer is no.
From Rick White, we hear you, but what about due process? There have been far too many reports where it seems to have ceased. We know of at least 2 local places where the inspector assumed no food was consumed when it was, and they never requested to see your receipt or record. They simply cited the operator.
Well, due process is my middle name, and you get your due process in a summary suspension, like I explained, after they hang you. But that is a legal process, which up until COVID was rarely used. Now it's more frequent. It's still a small percentage on the overall number of places that have gotten violations. I want to say that most of the violations were basic. You got the charges, and right in the charges, it offered a settlement, what they call a no contest plea, generally around $1,500. It really didn't pay to go to a hearing and fight it. These inspectors are taking photographs. So for the most part, I've seen the evidence, I've seen, like they say there's no mask. They have a picture of somebody behind a bar not wearing a mask. The food one, is, a good one where, if you can have documentation. With one client, he claimed he had the documentation. What he gave me was not great. But had he had the documentation from that night that the inspector was there, showing that in fact every outdoor table had ordered food and here's the amount they would have, I could have used that at a minimum to help reduce the agreed upon settlement amount. But at the end of the day, you do have due process after they hang you, even at a summary suspension. You are entitled to a quick hearing. But the chances, of winning that quick hearing at an administrative tribunal is slim. And at the end of the day, on any of the charges they find you guilty of, it goes back to those same commissioners who already voted to summary suspend you for a penalty. So you really don't go through that process unless you have deep pockets and you're ready to then go to court and challenge the entire lack of due process, the authority of the executive order. I believe the executive order stating that you're responsible for policing within 100 feet is unlawful. But my belief doesn't mean anything until a court would say so. But you would need somebody to actually bring that, and you have to have real deep pockets and be able to not have alcohol for a long time.
It's sort of like traffic court, on steroids, right? You're guilty until proven innocent.
One thing I just want to mention, I think people understand it, but it's worth mentioning that the state liquor authority only regulates your alcohol. So if your license is summary suspended, if you're a bar, obviously there's no reason to stay open. But if you're a restaurant or if you were a pizza place where you had beer and wine and it was a minimal amount, you were allowed to remain open. You just can't serve, any alcohol during that period of time.
But Phil Capadora, what if we bring our own food?
What if you want your own food?
Bring our own food.
The BYOF, bring your own food?
Yeah.
No good.
No good. Okay.
All right. Is not the least of which is New York City Health Department does not allow food from your home to be brought into a commercial establishment and sold.
In general, yes. In general.
They shut you down for that. In general.
Well, from Neil, a lot of Astoria's restaurants have been violating social distance guidelines, and some restaurants do not ensure their wait staff wear masks properly. I mean, okay.
That's a problem.
Even I can answer that compliance is a huge issue. It has to be addressed, or we'll just step backwards.
Right. We can't go backwards.
Yeah.
We can't give the mayor an excuse when inevitably infection rates go up because the schools and the colleges have opened, to blame restaurants and try to argue with the governor, let's pull back on restaurants when nobody else is going back to phase one. So we've got to show compliance so that you give us the ammunition to say, you may need to close the schools, but you don't need to close the restaurants.
Two questions from Maria Pacu. What about restaurants with counter seats? Number one.
Excellent question. Well, I'll do that one first, Maria. To be determined. Technically, as an SLA lawyer, I could tell you there is a legal distinction between a counter and a bar. The SLA considers a bar any point of sale. So it could look like a traditional bar, or in a fast casual where there is no traditional bar and maybe they're only selling glasses of beer and wine, it might be the counter, might be the bar. So it may be a case-by-case analysis, but a true food counter, like in your old-fashioned diner, where they then had a little bar on the side, where the drinks came from, in my opinion, that counter is fine. As long as the seats are 6 feet apart. That's not a bar.
That's a service bar, right? It would be a service bar.
That's a counter. It's a food counter.
Yeah.
Schools, stuff like that. It's like another table.
Yeah.
As long as the bar is in another area. When the bar is right behind that counter, it's going to be a problem.
And then just a comment from Maria. Most of drinking being purchased from neighborhood bodegas, not from the bars or restaurants. As a matter of fact, I know that there was also a lot of trouble. You know, speaking of the governor, he had pictures of Astoria Park, and then Steinway Street got all out of control for a while, and most of the alcohol was being brought in by these people. They weren't purchasing it from anybody. They were just getting it from either bringing it from home or like they've always done in Astoria Park. It was basically the same group of people. They brought it with them. And then all the restaurants got themselves in huge trouble over that.
I'm an old nightlife lawyer. That was when I left Department of Consumer Affairs. The first people that came to me were nightclubs. I did places like, the Tunnel and CBGB's and, and the Red Zone and the Underground and all, I know nightlife. And
Danceteria, I used to work there.
Really? I didn't do that license, but, the Limelight, all Peter Gation's places I did. So I know, very well, and I touched on it earlier, that the history of nightlife is that people, especially young people, will go out at night, and they will go out late at night, and they will socialize, and they will drink. And if you do not give them legal, safe, licensed places to do that, they will find illegal, unsafe, unlicensed places to do that. Raves, we used to call it in my day. They're calling them other stuff now. But that's what happened with the Happy Land. That's what happened, with, every 20 years, other, social clubs that had fires because they were unsafe, unlicensed places. So I get it, Maria. I agree with you. Having said that, we still, we're still going to be painted with that broad brush as much as possible. It's almost to our advantage if that street party scene starts again for us to be calling the police.
There's a comment from Phil. I'm not sure it really applies here. I mean, can we buy seasonal drinking passes for outdoor gatherings, picnic style? I'm not sure what that. You're talking about in the parks or something like that? Because there's no drinking in parks quite often. So
I don't know what that means either, but
I'm not sure.
LA laws, there's no seasonal drinking passes, that you could buy as far as I've ever seen under the SLA.
Okay. From Tom Vasiliou. Do you have a checklist or something shareable that bars should cover to give you evidence to defend them with? Itemized receipts by table.
Another excellent question. And while I do not. And while there is and I'll hold it up, maybe you'll see it. While the Department of Transportation did this excellent booklet, what to expect when you're inspected, which there was a cute play in that old book. What to expect when you're expecting. Do you remember that? Our wives bought that back then. And the SLA has not done one like this, and we've asked them to. Their position is you should, anybody could figure it out and should know what the rules are. So we've been doing our best to do these programs to try to educate people. But I'm sorry, Tom, I do not have a convenient checklist.
Well, listen, I think that it's been great. You guys have covered a lot. I think that we're going to have to go on in the program right now. What I will do is, everyone, if you're listening, if you have further questions, please put them in the chat and we will forward them on to either Jeffrey or Andrew or Tom, and we'll get you answers back.
If you need legal representation, now or in the future, hopefully for happier reasons, because you want to open up a new establishment or expand your establishment, you can go to our website. It's Brzezowski and Bookman. We have a very, friendly website, and we'd be happy to represent you. Just remind me that you were on this, website discussion with Richard, which is excellent, and we'll treat you like family.
And if you can give your email address, I would suggest you do that, and you could also put it in the chat.
Sure.
Okay.
I do that both. It is rbookman, RBOOKMAN @ P as in Paul, B as in boy .law, and I'll put it in the chat.
Great job. And listen, I also expect there were some people in the industry that had trouble making a 6:30 start because that's their dinner hour, which was an issue. But because Astoria is still pretty busy, thank God we're not like Manhattan. Anyway, that's
true. The neighborhoods, even the Manhattan neighborhoods, have been doing much better than the business areas. Times Square is a desert. Midtown is a desert. Fidei is a desert. those restaurateurs have told me, I don't care if you can get me 50% tomorrow. I'm not opening. There's nobody here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and what I want to do is, the link will be available on this. So anybody that's listening now, if you have friends or anybody else in the industry that you think should listen to this, I will be putting a post on our site with the links so you can go back and get them. And if you have further questions, just email us and we will forward them on and we'll get you the answers.
I want to thank you, Richard. This is great. You're doing a wonderful service to the community and to the industry, and we really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. Very good. Okay, very good. So I hope everybody got something out of it. I think it was great. I'd like to bring out Frank Arcabasio right now. We work together on actually organizing 30th Avenue to take advantage of the Open Streets, Open Restaurants program. We were not successful, regretfully, but he's been doing a lot of work with me. Frank, are you available? Oh, Victor, is he in the is he backstage or not? Or did he leave us?
No, he's not. He's not available.
Okay, then. Well, then, but Frank Arcabasio, 30th Avenue Business Association, he worked quite a bit with us when we were trying to establish an Open Streets, Open Restaurants program. We did get 20 restaurants signed up. It was a lot of work, but we were successful at that. However, I think because of traffic issues due to the closure of 31st Avenue, plus also some issues having to do with the trouble on Steinway Street, where we're not successful in getting approved. We do hope to readdress that soon, the same way we'd like to possibly readdress the fact that not every block on Ditmars and the recent Open Streets, Open Restaurants program was closed. So these are all things that are on, and we'd like to see if we can get them also included in the program. These are all things that we'll be working on. I'd also now, this is Jonathan Forgash. Jonathan, are you there?
Sure.
Beautiful, Jonathan. There's been some great work done in our community by a lot of individuals during the pandemic, having to do with helping to feed people and helping them to survive during the pandemic. Also, using programs to help the restaurants out. And one of the primary movers on this is Jonathan Forgash with his associate Jamie Fabine. They've worked great together, and they've created Queens Together. So I want to give them a chance to explain what they're doing so people can be aware of what the program is. Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Richard. Hello, everybody. I am the co-founder with Jamie Fabine of Queens Together. I'm also the executive director. What we do is we support the food industry and communities across Queens. And we do this because we believe that our local food industry is the engine for nourishing our communities with not only food, but income, work, and hope, especially during the time of crisis. Now, we launched at the end of March, and what we've been doing is we've been raising money to through social media fundraising platform to pay restaurants at first to prepare meals for hospital workers, but we quickly pivoted to feeding families and communities across the borough facing real food and economic security issues. We found that hospital workers, actually had pay, and the administrator started saying, "Listen, we're getting enough food. You should put it where you need it." So we pivoted to families across the borough. We've served over 35, maybe 40,000 meals, raised over $100,000. And we do this by working very closely hand in hand with restaurants. And not only were they preparing meals, but they are even now preparing dry goods, because we set up a network of food pantries across the borough. We do our main one in Astoria at the Boys and Girls Club on 21st Street. And we work with 5 other volunteer networks from Jackson Heights, Flushing, Jamaica, St. Albans, church groups, volunteers, everybody. We help feed about 7,000 to 10,000 people every week with fresh produce from the USDA program that Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney helped sponsor and has actually visited us and worked with us to try to promote the program and extend it. You know, it all comes back to, I come from 30 years as a chef and a food business person. Chefs and restaurateurs are always called upon to donate and provide service and help those in need. Very often we do it for free, and very often we do it without very little recognition. And part of Queens Together is acknowledging this work that you all do out there, how hard you work. And we didn't ask for any donations from the restaurants during these past 5 months. We paid the restaurants, they made some profit, and we promoted them across social media, press releases, any chance we had to speak in front of the news, because we believe that as a group, we have a powerful voice, and we can really not just help ourselves, but help our neighbors around us. And when the crisis abates, your neighbors are going to see that, you know, who was there during the crisis? Your restaurant was there. And they are going to remember you and call on you when they want to go back out and eat and dine and have fun. That's essentially what we're all about, Richard. Support and acknowledgement.
Well, you've been a great asset to the community, and people should know what's going on. I know that you guys are sort of you don't like to take bows, but you know, I'm here to try and remedy that situation. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Any comments from anybody or any questions?
If you would like to hear more, you can go to queenstogether.org. We would like restaurants to join our voice. We would like communities to approach us about doing food-related community service projects in any community in Queens, from Astoria down to Far Rockaway. So please, we invite restaurants, cafes, food shops, and any community service group that would like help. We are here to help you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You're getting a lot of compliments. Queens Together rocks. Excellent work. Yay, Jonathan. Yay, Jamie. It's great to see all these wonderful comments. So, okay.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. We'll talk soon. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I'd like to bring out now, and occasionally we have a win. Okay. This win took a couple years, but many of you may be aware that the Astoria Ferry has been providing service now to the Upper East Side. From Astoria, we've created another corridor, which I hope develops into a good commercial and cultural housing development, and we can start to share more with Manhattan, so that you know, everybody gains from the experience. So I'd like to bring out the New York City EDC representative Franny Civitano, and also from Hornblower is Jeffrey Brault available. Jeff, great. So if you'd like to both go on, and if you'd like to start to make a presentation or discuss what you'd like to about this, I'm giving you the floor. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having us. I'm Franny. I work with the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which oversees the NYC Ferry system. So I am here to give some updates along with Jeff, who can introduce himself.
Hey everyone, Jeff Brault, Hornblower, New York, operator of NYC Ferry. I'm the Public Affairs Manager and work in close coordination with Franny and her team at EDC.
Good.
Great. Jeff, are you sharing the presentation or you want me to? I can do it.
Yes, can everybody see it? I'm sharing my screen right now.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So quickly before Franny gets into the East 90th Street Astoria connection, just a couple of things to note as far as COVID-19 policies. Real quick, a reminder, masks or face coverings are required to board and must remain on at all times, even on the upper deck. So even if you are outside, please do keep your face mask on. As a reminder, they are not required for people with medical exemptions. We do ask that you keep a 6-foot distance from others when possible. This is to help keep yourself, keep other passengers and our crew members safe at all times. We do ask or want to have a reminder that tickets must be purchased before boarding NYC Ferry. That can be done via the NYC Ferry app or at the ticket vending machines at each of our landings. We do recommend that you download the NYC Ferry app and use it. It provides contactless ticketing to help keep yourself safe and our crew members safe as well. And just a couple of points on what we do each day to keep our riders and crew safe. We have frequent cleaning of high touch areas throughout the day and throughout each of our vessels. and then daily cleaning of vessels that goes along with our daily servicing of vessels to ensure that we can provide a safe and reliable transportation option for New Yorkers. And I'll turn it over to Franny.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So as Rich mentioned before, we are very excited that on the 22nd of August, we launched the Astoria route extension, which now connects Astoria and the rest of the Astoria route to East 90th. This has been a long time coming, and it probably wouldn't have been possible without advocacy by many different community groups, including Old Astoria Neighborhood Association at the forefront of that. So we really appreciate all of the feedback and the participation that came from especially this community and this group. So overall, it's only been a few weeks, but we are looking at this as a pretty successful launch so far. So as I said, it launched on the 22nd of August. It's just a 4-minute travel time to get across from Astoria to East 90th. And there's no change in travel time to the rest of the route. So if you are an Astoria rider, you can still get to all the other locations in the same amount of time. We did update the schedule a little bit to adjust for the addition of the new stop, but basically we're seeing that people are saving on average or up to about 25 minutes to get from Astoria to East 90th, which before obviously required, trains, buses, sometimes both. And now there's more connections to hospitals, job hubs, open space, cultural institutions on both sides. We're seeing it as a well-used connection in both Manhattan and Astoria. And what I find very interesting is our pre-COVID estimates for how many riders we thought we would see using this link every day has actually exceeded our expectations during COVID, which is very exciting. So on weekdays, we're seeing about 11% of Astoria route riders are using the new link. So of all the riders we're seeing throughout the whole route, 11% are either getting off or coming from East 90th, which shows that this is sort of a popular connection, and even higher on weekends. For example, this past Saturday over Labor Day weekend, we saw 2,000 people get on or off the Astoria route at East 90th, which shows that those are people who could not have used that link beforehand. And just in general, NYC Ferry, like all other transportation options in New York, like the Staten Island Ferry, MTA buses, and subways, at the height of COVID, we were all down about 90% of ridership. And ferries have actually, NYC Ferry has come back faster than those other modes, and we're now down about half of where we were this time last year. So ridership is coming back. We are seeing increases, and we hope that you will keep in mind all of the policies that Jeff mentioned at the beginning with mask wearing and keeping distance, and that you come out and join us on the ferry. My colleague Ratty, who is usually the person who would be here, he's our government and community relations representative, his email is on the screen. So if you have any NYC Ferry questions, please reach out to him, and Jeff's email also is there on the screen if you want to get in touch with either of them. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has them. You're muted, Richard.
I'm muted. I am not muted. Okay. I have one question. We have gotten some feedback that there are some Astoria residents that have had. They said that there's too many people getting on in the Upper East Side, so that they're having the ferry arrive very crowded. I do not know if anybody's actually been left behind at this point. I don't have that data or information. And I also think that this probably has a lot to do with COVID and restrictions on capacity. But do you have any comments on this?
Yeah. So generally, this is sort of obviously it doesn't feel good in the moment if you are left behind because the ferry's at capacity. But this is really a good problem to have, especially with a new segment to a route. And while we don't, try to have people left behind, it is showing that this is a popular connection. What we have done is, like, over Labor Day weekend, we had larger ferries on the Astoria route. And this is something that we will keep an eye on, as we do with all the routes that see left behinds. The route that we see the most frequent left behinds over usually on weekends are Rockaway and East River. And so riders on those routes prepare to potentially wait a little bit longer. We are seeing some left behind at Astoria and at Roosevelt Island. The numbers that I have been hearing are, less than a dozen people. So it definitely is happening. But it is something that we're keeping an eye on. And yes, as you said, the COVID capacity restrictions are making it a little bit difficult for us, but we plan to keep that going for the foreseeable future, because we want to make sure that there is enough room on board to distance as much as possible.
Good. What about, I've heard discussions on some of the new vessels are going to be larger capacity. Are they in service yet? Would you be using them on this line? Is it another possibility?
Yes. So we, during COVID, pre-COVID, we had the larger vessels on the Astoria route pretty much throughout the week. The Astoria route is one of our most popular routes, and it's one of the ones that is that has increased growth pretty continuously. And so before COVID, it was pretty standard to have larger vessels on this route throughout the week. During COVID, we have been, for obvious reasons, mostly budget reasons, we have been very, very careful and thoughtful about where we're putting different size vessels, because it does cost us more to run the larger ones. So that has been part of our schedule planning. So they are in service. We are looking at it constantly and frequently, which is why riders have seen many schedule changes throughout the summer. I think we've had 6 since COVID hit. And so that will be something that we're looking at through the fall, but we're really trying to match capacity with vessel type and frequency to make sure that we're not putting on more service than we need to.
Good.
Yeah, and Rich, one thing to add, thanks to the flexibility of the ferry, of NYC Ferry and the overall system, our teams can do that as needed to meet demand and also ensure that people can travel safely while socially distancing.
Good. Well, I do hope that you consider utilizing them. Sounds like they might be needed on this service, so I hope to see that in the future. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Anybody in the chat? Oh, it's pretty. Let me see here. What do we have? It's just Uber boats. I don't know what that one means. Oh, from Jonathan, it's love the ferry and the new route. Best adventure with the greatest views in New York City. That's very nice.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Good.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Good. So, okay, listen. Now that the capacity is starting with indoor dining, what is the actual? Is it 50% at this point for the ferries, or is it just on the upper deck? What is the actual restrictions at this point?
It's not a percentage per se. We did a calculation based on how many riders. So it was sort of a complicated calculation, but basically we were assuming X number of riders would be traveling alone and X would be traveling in groups. And so it was really a calculation of how much space there is on the lower and upper deck combined, and then how many feet of distance those groups and those people would have. So where we got to our number. So it is reduced, certainly is reduced from full capacity. But, you know, it has been mostly adequate to meet the needs of the ridership that we're seeing. Obviously on a route like Rockaway, where, you know, everyone wants to go to the beach for $2.75 and doesn't want to go underground, those folks have to wait a little bit longer. Yeah, so it's not a percentage, but based on how much space people have.
Okay, it's sort of like what was said about the restaurants when they thought that it shouldn't be a percentage. It should be with, you know, if you can maintain the 6 foot, that should be the criteria, not about a percentage of your capacities. All right. See, you followed the logic. Anyway, okay. Also from Tony Foy, when are you going to bring back uptown service from, I guess, Collier's Hook? I work in Long Island City, but the ferry route has become, I'm not sure what that means, become a stub. I'm not sure. Do you know this particular route she's talking about?
Yes, I do. So as we made some changes in the middle of May to the ferry service, some temporary and permanent changes to address overall system efficiency as well as budget reasons. So the change that Tony I believe is talking about is the reconfiguration of the Lower East Side route, which used to be a dedicated route. And now the Lower East Side stop, so Corlier's Hook and Stuyvesant Cove, were reconfigured to be served by other routes. So largely the reason that was made was because we wanted to ensure that all current NYC ferry landings were still served by the system. That was really important to us, that we didn't have to discontinue service to any given landing. And that was really what made sense for the whole system. We were seeing that Corlier's Hook riders are just not, you know, we're not using the ferry frequently. I think in peak times, we were seeing that 2 people were traveling from Corlier's Hook to Midtown on any given trip. And so there were some changes that were made to do that. So this doesn't help a person who lives near Corlier's Hook and works in Lower East Side. But we were looking at it more as that stop being connected to now being connected to Brooklyn when it wasn't before, and still having service to downtown, and with a transfer could also get to Midtown.
Okay.
And Richard, just to add, yeah, Franny can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that saved the city of New York approximately $10 million.
Yeah, not just that configuration itself, but all of the changes that were made altogether, including that one. Yes, that was a $10 million saving. And so we don't have plans at the moment to connect Corlier's Hook to Midtown. That's something that we're planning at the moment.
Okay. I'd like a couple other comments that I have. First of all, what is the position? I mean, I think one of the things that's really needed in the ferry system, there are a number of things, but number one is first mile, last mile. I think that's a huge issue. I know that I was actually one city councilman in Brooklyn actually was considering using his some of his funding to actually purchase a shuttle. I don't know if that ever went through or if he actually did that. I know that we only have shuttles right on 34th Street in Manhattan and then the Rockaways, correct? So I'd like to see this be universal on every landing. What are your thoughts on that? What's happening with that? Can you make any comments on that?
Sure. So the idea with NYC Ferry was to create a more connected city, give people more transportation options, who live in areas where they have an arduous commute or they are far from transportation options. Like in Astoria, it's a very long, if you live near the landing, it's a very long walk to the train. Like you might take a bus to a train to maybe another train. And so people are seeing real savings, time by using the ferry. So we purposefully chose ferry landings that are far from trains. And it is incredibly expensive to run shuttles to ferry landings. And so, the original idea at least was that people would walk or bike to a ferry landing. And we do see that most riders, over 70% do walk or bike. We don't have plans to add any additional shuttles. The only one that is contemplated or not contemplated, but that is planned is there will be a small vehicle that will go from the Ferry Point Park parking lot to the landing, and that's because it's in a sort of remote area of the park, and it's there to be an option for people who might have accessibility concerns, so that they don't have to walk to the landing.
Good. One of the things that actually came up with a few people, and actually it looks like we just had a comment like that concerning this, was that from a marketing standpoint, now that we have the service from the Upper East Side, we would like to be able to start to promote our bars, restaurants, housing, cultural centers to the Upper East Side, and I'm sure that they would like to do the same in reverse. And a tool for that would be very important would be some sort of a shuttle that would leave our landing and hit, let's say, 30th Avenue and Ditmars and maybe Broadway or something like that, and also maybe like the Museum of the Moving Image or something like that. So this is something that I'd love to see happen. This is just the beginning of another journey, just like getting this particular direct service to the Upper East Side was a very long journey of 2 years. So we're taking the first steps towards that. We'd like to see that happen. I know that in the city I used to go to, Istanbul, a lot, they had actually ferries to restaurants going from the Asian side, or between the Asian side and the European side. And people would just go out to dinner, jump on the ferry. The ferry would end up right down by the restaurant. They'd have dinner and then they'd come back via ferry. So it's a very nice idea, and I hope that it's something that can happen in the future. What about the last question I have for you is what about the, this, by the way, this was also brought up by Proud Historian. She had the same comment of what I just said. So the last question I have is what are plans now for a northern route or new routes that are coming in the next phase? I know that we had often talked about putting a second landing on Potts Cove on the north side of Hallett's Peninsula and making that into a transfer station, to have another route, maybe going up to the Bronx and up to Bayside and the airport. I know that there is the Marine Air Terminal still exists there, so it might make an interesting stop for the ferry. Any thoughts towards all this?
I will say that we are dedicated right now to and committed to the expansions that we announced, that the mayor announced in, I guess it was 2019 now, the very beginning of it, to Ferry Point Park as an extension of the Soundview route to Coney Island and Staten Island and the west side. So we have not put thought to any other ferry landings at the moment. And I know the mayor has committed to doing another ferry feasibility study after those expansions have happened, which we anticipate will be by the end of next year. So I don't have any word on that right now, but I like where you're headed.
Okay. Last question from Alpaca Jones, from Neil. Last year I did the walk from the Upper East Side. It's a 10-minute walk to the Q and the Lexington 6. What was the issue about moving the dock to, let's say, 97th Street?
I mean, I am not sure why. I don't know off the top of my head the geography of 97th Street, so I can't really comment on why it wasn't there. in the first place, but moving a ferry landing would be an incredibly expensive capital expense, and that is not something that we are thinking about or prepared to do right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your input and your questions and answers. Thank you for, I mean, it's been a great addition to the whole culture of New York City, its ferry system and use of its waterways, and we're just looking for better things in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Richard, and thank you for your advocacy.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so next, our councilman, Constantinides, I don't know if people know this, but he was afflicted with COVID, and he can explain more about that. He couldn't be here in person, but he did make a video. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to play that video. Our councilman, Costas Constantinides. Oh, we have no audio. There it is. Oh, okay, interesting. Oops. Hey, while I'm waiting, I don't know if Franny or Jeffrey are still on the line. There was an interesting question here. Are there any advertising opportunities available that won't cost an arm and a leg on the ferry? Are they still available? And if you are, could you, maybe you could even answer in chat.
Richard, having some issues with the costume video.
All right, can you bring in Shelby then, and then you can work on it?
Sure.
Shelby.
Hello.
Hi, listen, I'd like to tell everybody, our Congresswoman, Carolyn Maloney, was supposed to be with us tonight. Regretfully, she had to take a train, and because trains' internet can be very unstable, it didn't make sense to actually have her do a live broadcast from the train. So instead, Shelby Garner, the new chief of staff in the office of our representative, has come on, and he'd like to read a statement.
Yes, and unfortunately, actually, the Congresswoman is, I think, playing a game of trains, planes, and automobiles right now because there was a flash flood on Amtrak, and so we're trying to figure out how to get her back to New York. But she asked me to read a brief statement for you. So, good evening. I wish I could join all of you tonight, but I'm on my way back from an important congressional hearing in D.C. on my Pandemic Risk Insurance Act. PRIA would allow small businesses to be able to get and afford business interruption insurance in pandemics, which was denied to them in the current COVID crisis. I'd first like to thank President Richard Kazami and the entire Old Astoria Neighborhood Association for all that you've done during these trying past months to help this community. Astoria is a part of our city so tied to its small businesses and restaurants, and OANA has done its part in advocating for more government aid to this community that is literally struggling to survive. While the House passed the HEROES Act back in May, which would provide the money for new PPP loans, rent relief, and the Farm to Families program, which community leaders like Jonathan Forgash of Queens Together have leveraged to provide fresh meals to thousands of families around Queens, the Republicans have not taken up the bill. I'm committed to fighting for federal funding for our community that it needs to make it through this crisis. I'm also working hard to extend the census count, which is inexcusably being cut short at the end of September by the Trump administration, and working to save the U.S. Postal Service ahead of a national election in which millions will vote by mail. I've advocated for this change, which will reduce. One piece of great news that I'd like to celebrate with you is the recent opening of direct ferry service from Astoria to the Upper East Side. I've advocated for this change, which will reduce public transportation commutes between the two neighborhoods from as long as 90 minutes to a 4-minute boat ride. Also, it's great to know that construction will finally begin in October on the rebuilding of the Astoria Houses seawall. Coastal resiliency in Western Queens is something I've long advocated and worked hard to secure funding for. I wish I could be there to take questions, but remember, I or my staff is always reachable through my website or by phone at 212-860-0606.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not sure if you can answer them. You will. If not, we'll try and find the answer for them.
I'm happy to try or get an answer to you at a later date.
I guess, well, okay. I guess not. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Give our best to the Congresswoman, okay? We hope that she gets home safe, okay? And we look forward to hopefully having her in one of our upcoming meetings very soon.
Absolutely, and I put my email in the chat, which you're more than welcome to share with everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, so Victor, how are we doing with the video?
So the video won't play because of the audio. The video plays, but to share the audio, it looks like it needs to be hosted online. Can't play from a local computer. So you can jump into a different guest. I'll give you the thumbs up if I can get it working.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, our next, is Claudia Cogar in the waiting room? Victor?
No.
Okay, all right. I know that she had a DYCD meeting tonight that she had to attend, and she was going to, which she didn't know about. So she was going to try and get off of it and join us. I guess she wasn't able to. So I guess for our last presenter, I'd like to bring in from the New York City Comptroller's office, James Mangaluzzo and Harris Khan. And the reason behind this is that I've been aware of the Comptroller's office for many years, but I never knew the specifics of exactly what you do and how you do it. And I thought it would take this opportunity just to get an overview of the office, how it operates, what it does for everybody. I think we're getting an echo. Your speakers on?
Oh yeah, the speaker situation. One moment, sorry. Okay, all right. There's no echo now, right? Better?
Hello. Nope, better.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. All right, so hi. So I'm James, and I'm from the New York City Comptroller's Office. We have a lot to speak about. The Comptroller's Office does a wide range of things, and I'll try to go through the different bureaus that we have, and I'll especially touch on the ones that are that maybe the public can have more of a direct interaction with. And I want to introduce the newest member of the team at the Comptroller's Office, of our Community Affairs team. So he's the official representative for this area. So I'll let him do his own introduction. Go ahead.
Instead of unmuting, I closed the camera. But hi, folks. So good to spend this time with all of you. My name is Harris Khan. I'm the new community liaison for CB1, Queens. And thank you for the invitation, Richard. Looking forward to working with you and all the other great community members and activists and leaders and organizers that do so much for our community.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll type my contact information in the chat here. If there's any issues, or if there's any way our office can be of assistance, please feel free to contact me as well.
Good.
Yeah, so soon you'll know what you should be contacting him about. So we're going to go over all the different things that the Comptroller's Office does. And I do want to also add, as many people added before, that I actually used to work in the nightlife industry as well for much longer than I've worked at the Comptroller's Office. Used to set up a lot of instruments and live bands and stages at a lot of the clubs, including CBGB's, which was mentioned earlier by one of the guests. And I'm also from the general area. I grew up in the area between Hazen and LaGuardia Airport, north of the Grand Central, which some people now call Astoria Heights, but we used to call it Jackson Heights when I lived there. But I guess a lot of people say East Elmhurst now. So I'm from the CB1 area. I live in the CB3 zone now. All right, so the Comptroller's office is a big office, lots of different bureaus in there. So I'm going to go over the first few bureaus that are really maybe more so behind the scenes. The first one I wish to talk about is accountancy. So accountancy is the bureau that deals with investments for the 5 main pension plans. So if you're a municipal worker, you might have a pension plan, and they're the ones that really manage the finances or check the finances behind it. And they also work on some variable supplemental funds as well, of which there are 11. I'm not going to go too much into the details about that, but if you have a question about your pension, if you're someone who has one, you can reach out to our office, but we will connect you to the specific pension fund that you're invested in. So our second bureau is a Bureau of Asset Management, and that's really all about the oversight of the investment portfolio of the New York City retirement system. So that's mostly managed by external investment managers. What they do is they manage the money through putting it into like publicly traded securities. There's also some of the assets are in private equity, some are in real estate, hedge funds, but mostly publicly traded securities. The next one I want to talk about is the Economic Development Bureau. So this bureau, they make recommendations for targeted investments for the city, and they research future development ideas, where the city can put some public money to spur development and maybe increase tax revenues and so on. And they also look at affording housing policy and where it might make sense to do investments on housing, which is a big issue now. The next bureau I want to talk about is engineering. We have an engineering bureau, and this engineering bureau, they deal with negotiations and recommendations related to contract disputes with contractors that are doing work for the city. And if there's any engineering issue related to a job, then they'll try to give their expertise to our Bureau of Law and Adjustment, which actually deals with claims against the city for property damage. But I'll talk more about that one in more that bureau in more detail. So the engineering bureau also deals with liability and damage reports on city infrastructure that's related to engineering. Could be roads and things like that. All right, the next one that I want to talk about is public finance. So we deal in public finance. Our Bureau of Public Finance deals with borrowing. So they also manage the sale of city bonds. They manage debt. The city's debt, like the debt for things like school construction, for the I forget the exact name, but the management of our water system, money that debt that's related to improving the water infrastructure. So things of that nature. They're basically all about borrowing, and they deal with the debt of the city. And the last one I'm going to talk to about just quickly is public policy. So our public policy team, they are constantly analyzing data. They're constantly doing qualitative and quantitative research to put out policy ideas. So you may have seen some of these ideas recently. There was a policy report that was recently put out about increasing bike usage amongst high school students to encourage them to ride their bikes to school, because we anticipate many parents will be wanting to drive their children to high school if they can. And our analysis shows that most New York City parents with school-age children have access to a motor vehicle. So there's some fear that if a lot of people are driving, that there'll be more and more traffic. So this is a policy idea to help prevent some of the traffic that we anticipate. And the policy idea also involves teaching students at school how to use bikes, deal with bike safety. There's a policy proposal to try to connect schools to the bike infrastructure, like the bike lanes and so on, that are already there, and even giving access to bikes by allowing students to have free passes for city bike if you live in a city bike area. If you don't live in a city bike area, there's a policy plan to give bicycles to students. So our policy team does things like this all the time. We're always looking at the best uses of the city's money and how to do things more efficiently. So now what I'll do is I'll talk about some of the the other parts of the office, some of the other bureaus that you can interact with more easily as a resident of the city. So one of our most important agencies, most important bureaus is our Bureau of Audit. So what audit does is they audit every city agency, like those mayoral agencies such as Department of Transportation, the Parks Department, the agencies that are controlled by the mayor, in which the mayor appoints the head. We're mandated by the city charter to do at least one audit of each agency every 4 years. So what we do is we look at the finances of these agencies, make sure that they're spending money as they say they are, make sure that they're reporting on things correctly, and then we sometimes look at specific programs that they're conducting. So a recent audit that was done was about the rain gardens. The Department of Environmental Protection put a lot of rain gardens onto the street, and what we heard from many people at civic meetings like this, we heard about people complaining, saying they're filled with garbage, that people are taking the plants out, that they're not being maintained, that the water can't get into the garden because it's full of trash, and DEP and the contractors they hired to create the rain gardens were not maintaining them. So when the public tells us something like this, we inform our audit team to look into it, and they possibly will conduct their own investigation and come out with a bunch of recommendations. So we had a report a few months ago that came out with recommendations for Department of Environmental Protection on how to fix that program. So if you see any program run by any city agency, whether it be Parks or Department of Transportation, Department of Environmental Protection, Department of Homeless Services, if you see something that's not working efficiently, or you feel like money's being wasted or money could be spent in a better way, or the agency isn't fulfilling their obligation, that's the type of thing you should tell someone like me or someone like Harris, who's your rep for the area. So
how much time do you have?
I know it's a lot, but that's why you just send him the email or call the number that he gave out, since he's the rep for this area. And I can handle some of it too, I suppose, if if he needs some assistance with processing everything. So bring it on, Richard. Yeah, so that's a really big one, and we get a lot of ideas from coming to meetings. Now, let me talk about the bureau that we're part of, which is the Bureau of Public Affairs. I actually should have started with this one. So the Bureau of Public Affairs has all the representatives like us that go to the meetings and talk to the people and receive information and input from what people are complaining about, what people want us to investigate, and other issues that I'll talk about later as well. So the Bureau of Public Affairs has two parts. It has community affairs. That's what we do when we come to the meetings. We're like the public-facing part of the office. We also have a group called the Community Action Center. And the Community Action Center has a phone number that you can call, and it'll take you to people that will deal with constituent services. So maybe you have an issue where you feel like a city agency isn't doing their job. Maybe there's a pothole in the road, and you've told DOT for years that nobody's doing anything, or they're not responding to your emails. What we can do at the Community Action Center is we will directly contact the agencies for you. And we have a very good record of getting them to comply because, as I said previously, we're in charge of auditing and investigating them to make sure that they're doing their job. So we find that they tend to respond to our Community Action Center a lot faster than they do end up responding to individuals, or sometimes even council members, assembly members, or state senators. So if you're really stuck, if you have a dead end, you can definitely reach out to us. We can connect you to the Community Action Center, or you can go directly to their phone number, which is listed on our website. So yeah, please think about that as a resource. It's very helpful. We work with all sorts of constituent cases, the same type of things that your local representatives would do. But if you get dead ends with them, please contact us, because we can usually cut through a lot of the, at least the city bureaucracy. So in addition to audit, another important thing that we do is we deal with contract administration. So we have a Bureau of Contract Administration, and what they do is they're in charge of registering every single contract that the city has with outside contractors. So if a certain agency, let's say Department of Transportation, they need the roads paved, so they hire an outside contractor to do the work. our office looks at the contract that is sent to us by the administration, and we have 30 days to either register it or not register it. So what our office does is we look at the contractor, we look at their history. Is there any corruption associated with this contractor? Has the contractor done a similar job before? What was the quality of work done based on previous contracts if they have done previous work? And if we see anything that suggests to us that the contractor can actually fulfill the contract in a reasonable way, then we can choose not to register it, and then we'll ask more questions of the city agency when they can make sure that they can either try to find another contractor, or they can answer our concerns so that we feel confident enough to register a contract. So again, this is where the public comes in. So if you see shabby road work being done, or if you see a company that's pruning the trees for the parks department, but they're not doing a good job, and maybe they're causing some damage, maybe the tree falls on your car or something like that, let us know. That's the type of thing we want to know about, because we want to have all the information available to us when we decide whether or not to register contracts with these outside contractors. So a lot of people contact us about Department of Homeless Services, saying that the contractors that run many of the sites aren't doing a good job for a variety of reasons. Sometimes we even get complaints from the people that live inside the shelter telling us that the service provider isn't providing meals or providing certain services with to help them with their resumes or things like that. So anytime you see something like that, please tell us, flag it for our office, because we use information from the general public to do our investigations when we're looking at contracts. We also look at whether or not the city can actually afford to pay the contract. So if we feel like the contract is too big, then we might not register the contract for that reason as well. But we usually look we look more closely at the contractors that we're possibly hiring. All right. So all right, let's see another one. What else we got? There's a lot, right? There's a lot with the controller's office. All right, so we also have a Bureau of Labor Law. So what the Labor Law Bureau does is they enforce the prevailing wage laws. So when a company goes into a contract with the city of New York, they're typically required to pay workers what we call the prevailing wage. So when there's a construction project, you can't pay the people working on that construction project the minimum wage, right? That's not allowed. You have to pay them at the prevailing wage, which I believe right now for those type of projects, I believe it's about $54 per hour, but though I'm not 100% certain. So when we give a contractor a contract to do some big capital improvement type project, they have to pay that wage. What we find is that many of them do not pay that wage, and they pocket the extra money for themselves instead of paying it out to the workers. So our Bureau of Labor Law investigates cases where people are not getting paid the correct wage. And we also make sure that the living wage is being paid by living wage and prevailing wage are being paid in the cases where it's mandated to be paid by law. So what our Labor Law Bureau does is they create a database of people who were not paid the prevailing wage after they analyze the data that they have with contracts and so on. So we actually have a website or a page on our website where you can punch in your name or a name of friends or family that you know who may have worked on a city contracted job to see if they're owed any money. So since March, we actually got over $2 million to people that were owed money. Many of them didn't even realize they were owed money. Sometimes the employers are only maybe failing to pay $100 or $200 over several months. So you might not even notice it in your check that you're being cheated out of money. So again, if you know people that have worked on these kind of projects, we definitely suggest that you go to our website and look at the labor law section, and please punch in the names of any people you know, because there's a lot of unclaimed money there. There's millions of dollars of unclaimed funds, and that's our office's job, is to make sure that that money is returned to the people that owe it. Sorry, one second. I have this dog problem. One moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. animals here. All right. So
welcome to the age of COVID, right?
yeah, exactly. All right, so so please check that out on our website. And the next bureau I want to talk about is another very important one. It's the Bureau of Law and Adjustment. The Bureau of Law and Adjustment deals with all the claims that people file against the city. So if a city entity or a city property causes damage to your person or your property, you are able to file a claim against the city for damages. So our Bureau of Law and Adjustment, they look at the facts and decide whether or not your claim is valid, and they deal with whether or not you end up getting paid. Sorry, this dog is one moment. Sorry about that. I'm going to do my best here. So the Bureau of Law and Adjustment, like I said, they deal with claims against the city. So recently there was a big storm, and many trees fell down, which were Parks Department property, like the sidewalk trees. We even had some light fixtures fall as well. Some fell on people's fences or homes or cars. So some people have filed claims. Now, just because you file a claim and just because the city has caused damage to your property doesn't mean you will automatically be rewarded money in return, right? There's legal standards that that this is based on. So if something is, say, considered to be something like an act of God, like the city couldn't possibly be liable or defend against a powerful storm, then you might not get any money. But remember, I'm not a lawyer. I cannot tell you specifically in which cases you will get money or not. But if there was a Parks Department tree that you reported to 311 like 4 or 5 times, that it's decaying, that it's rotting, or that there's a structural damage to a light pole that fell, those would be cases in which you have a higher chance to be rewarded money. And there's a lot of other issues where people end up getting claims as well. So right now, the issue that the city ends up paying the most for, at least I think in the last fiscal year, was issues related to the NYPD, people filing claims against the NYPD for different types of misconduct, and also accidental issues. So maybe, a police vehicle hit your car, scraped it, and you could file a claim for something like that. Another big one from the city is our Department of Health and Hospitals. Like Elmhurst Hospital, for example, is one that's a city-run hospital. So sometimes the malpractice suits end up causing a large amount of payout as well. So NYPD, Health and Hospitals, but many different agencies as well. For not, maybe DOT didn't properly fix the roads. They were supposed to fix it every 5 years or repave or something. There's various different things. But again, just because you file a claim and just because there is damage that you can prove, that does not mean that you will actually get money. But you can file a claim. But all claims need to be filed within 90 days of the incident. So if you want any assistance in filing the claims, like we can send you the forms to do that, but we cannot assist you. Remember, we represent the city, and you are trying to take money from the city, so we cannot fill out the form for you. We can just tell you where the form is. We can't tell you what to write. We can just tell you. We can give you a general idea of the process, right? So if you need any assistance with filing a claim, or if anything I said resonated with you and there was an incident in the last 90 days, you can reach out to us as well to get information on how to do that. Our website has digital online claim forms as well, so you can file them there, and there's also a process to do it by mail. Let's see. Those are the major things. I believe, those are most of the bureaus. We have some more internal bureaus that I don't think you're too interested in, like tech support and stuff like that. But those are the main things that the office does. So, if you want any assistance with any of it or more information, you can reach out to us. And, please use your rep. You have a rep now. I mean, it used to be Elaine Fan, who's still the Queensborough director, but we've had some shuffling around. So now all of Queens has their own reps. Good.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to know all this. Actually, do you guys have some sort of a brief cheat sheet or something? Maybe even something with each bureau and maybe 1 or 2 sentences on their basic duties and contact information? Something like that would be excellent to be able to hand out and excellent to have.
We don't have it in the form of a handout or a PDF or something like that, but we do have a page on our website which lists all of the bureaus that I named, plus some of the more internal ones that I didn't name. And they do have phone numbers, I think, to the central.
Do they have descriptions, though, as to what they do? Because you just gave us a lot of information. So.
Yeah, they do have descriptions. There are descriptions there, and there are emails for most of them, emails or phone numbers for each of them, so, usually both. I believe all of those central numbers will be forwarded to someone who is working remotely at this time. So I believe all of those numbers should still be valid even though we are working remotely. And the emails are definitely valid. So you can definitely use that. And if you're having trouble reaching any particular bureau, please just call us as the reps and we'll make sure that the people in those bureaus respond to you if they are a public-facing agent bureau. Because some bureaus won't respond directly to the public. That's why we're the Bureau of Public Affairs and we have a community action center to deal with the public's requests. And then if we can't solve it, then it can go to those bureaus. So try to reach out to us first in most cases.
Okay, was that the link you just put in chat?
Yes, that's the link, and it has the descriptions and the email and the number.
Perfect.
Yeah, like what James just mentioned, a lot of these bureaus or some of them are not public-facing at all, and they would not know how to handle that. So also feel free to reach out to me.
I know that you've advised on some interesting tools that can be used. I mean, frankly, that's not generally public knowledge, a lot of this. Most of the tools that are being used that most people know about is either their local councilman or their community board. That's generally as far as they go. So it is good to have this other tool in our toolbox when we deal with these kind of issues. I knew you guys did something good. I just wasn't sure what it was.
A lot of good. I'm also going to paste and send you the link to the unclaimed wage website, that database James mentioned early on, where you have put up you could just write your last name or like a friend or a colleague and see if they were owed prevailing wage.
Okay.
Yeah, the district manager of Community Board 4 did it during one of the meetings and he found that a friend of his was owed money. So please use it.
Good. Okay, good. I guess that we had one question here from, I don't know if this is something that you can help with or not. Robin DeLuca said, what can be done about the constant noise and exhaust fumes from muscle cars and motorcycles? Is that something that you would be getting involved in at all?
Well, when we get involved with things like that, what we essentially do is we can maybe be a mediator or try to connect you to the agency or maybe like a police precinct that maybe be able to do something. But, you know, in those cases, this seems like it might be an issue related to the police department, depending on what exactly is going on. I suppose, you know, idling and exhaust fumes are a ticketable offense in New York City, depending on the amount of time that someone's idling. So that could be, you know, that could be a police issue. Not sure if it might be related to anything else like DOT. I don't believe so. But in cases like this, you can definitely reach out to our Community Action Committee, which is part of the Bureau of Public Affairs. And they will deal with any sort of constituent issues like this and help and guide you to the right spot.
Okay, is that particular bureau on the link that you just get sent?
It's within the Bureau of Public Affairs. So let me see if I'm not sure if the number for Community Action Committee specifically is in there. Yes, it is. So under the Bureau of Public Affairs, the number there goes directly to the Community Action Center of our office. Sorry, center, not committee. Excuse me.
Okay. All right. We have a few people on this subject that have brought it up. So if you're listening, go to that link and go to the Action Affairs unit that he's discussing, and we can go for there. You can also send me an email, okay, and I'll see what I can do to help. Another question here, well, I guess that's already answered, is can you give the phone number, email address of the Community Action Center? Okay. That's one we just answered. Good. Okay. Well, listen, again, you know, you've given us a lot of extra tools. Appreciate your time. And are there any other questions before we go on? I guess not.
All right. Well, thank you for having us.
Harris, I will be reaching out to you more than, you're not going to want to see the number on the phone.
Oh, God. Looking forward.
Give me a call when you have a chance. I'd like to talk.
Absolutely.
Okay. Absolutely. Thanks. And thank you so much. I'm glad that I had you guys on. It's been a long meeting. But thank you so much for presenting. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay, and I was just notified that we've got that video working, so it's a fitting end. The video of our Councilman, Constantinides, who's gone through trials and tribulations because of COVID that none of us should ever have to go through. So without further ado, Victor, can you put on the video? Appreciate it. Oh, I still don't have audio.
Been one that's
bravo, good.
usual. And I just wanted to leave a short message for the Old Astoria Neighborhood Association, beginning with Richard Kuzami, your president, and all of the membership. Thank you for all that you do throughout the community. We're excited to be here with you and to be able to discuss a few quick issues. Number one being the ferry service that's now going to Manhattan. I know that's made OANA fought so hard for, and with COVID, we have a healthcare crisis, and having additional access from the Howard Cove Peninsula to the Upper East Side goes a long way. So I want to thank OANA for your advocacy. Of course, Ms. Cogar, Carolyn Maloney, our Congress member, and many others were involved in this advocacy. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all that you do. This year was a very challenging year because of so many things. We've seen our restaurants and our businesses struggle because of COVID. We've seen our families torn apart because of this disease. I know from personal experience, sadly being someone with pneumonia back in March, that it is a very devastating disease. And I pray for anyone in the audience who has a family member that's been affected. But I know as a city, we're continuing to deal with the aftermath of the disease, of what it's done to our local businesses. I know our restaurants just today were announced at 25% capacity can open indoors. Our restaurants are hurting. We need the feds to come in. We need to be able to stop rent payments, stop mortgage payments, and let the federal government help our city. Our city needs to be supported because these businesses, 25% capacity is not the magic bullet. We need real guidance from the federal government who can really help. And this is a natural disaster. We were the epicenter of the world just a few short months ago. So we need that federal intervention to help our small businesses get to the other side of this, because we need to make sure that they're able to continue to pay their rent and pay their expenses and pay their employees. But if we don't get federal stimulus dollars, if we don't get a cancel rent, cancel mortgage, we're going to see a cascading here of losing businesses like Ricardo's. That is just going to be catastrophic for our businesses. And our restaurants are such a huge part of Astoria. So I hope that we can get to a place federally where we're doing the right things. We're going to continue to fight on the city level. We're doing everything that we can to feed people. And our food pantry, been working closely with Queens Together, who's had food pantries out of the Variety Boys and Girls Club parking lot. I know one is on the 10th. The 10th, yes. So I hope that anyone who needs food can get food. I know we've been working with Urban Upbound as well. So again, thank you to OANA for all that you do. Thank you for advocacy on so many issues, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Please stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank Councilman Constantinides for all his support over the years, and that I hope he gets better soon and he's back with us. And before we go, we saw there's an entry from Proud Astorian saying, just wanted to share the info for this Sunday's Proud Astorian Volunteer Cleanup sponsored by Oana. Okay, it's going to be on the 13th Sunday, 10 a.m. at Rainey Park. They're thinking big and want to try and cover all the playgrounds south of Rainey Park, including Rainey, Socrates, Hallett's, and the walkway along the waterfront. We can use their help, so please consider attending or signing up on our mailing list to donate time or supplies. Link to the event is on your chat, so take it from there, okay? So, again, there's a lot going on. This is a long meeting. The restaurant portion did go a little bit longer than I thought it would, but it's a big issue. So, again, thanks to everybody that presented. Thanks to Victor for his work as a host. And have a wonderful month. We'll be back next month with a new program. If you have any questions, if you will be able to go to a link on Facebook we're going to have of this particular meeting. You can go back and check on anything if you want to listen to it again. Victor, it'll also have the chat and the link. Does that work that way?
Yeah, so the chat replay is available too.
Okay, so we will also have that available. So thank you, everybody, and be safe. Good night.